Today, I'm going to talk to you about why I believe that the AMG CLK63 Black Series is the most undervalued and the best value for money of any Black Series model. And what better way to talk to you about that than with my very own one of 25 UK cars, CLK Black Series. However, first, it's time for a little bit of a Black Series history lesson. Black Series, which is AMG's very special division, started all the way back in 2006 with the SLK. There was the SLK65 AMG, the little pocket rocket convertible two-seater with a big V8 up front, and from that they had a one-make racing series called the Asian Cup, in Asia of course, and all of those cars, they took the folding hardtop roof off, replaced them with a fixed carbon fibre roof and stripped them out, of course, made them more powerful, made them lower and wider. And AMG decided, you know what, that would be great as a road car. So they made the Black Series based on that. There were only around about 100 to 120 mixed reports of those cars ever made. In fact, the take-up of those cars wasn't very good back in 2006. But a little fact that you might not know about the Black Series, that fixed carbon fibre roof that I mentioned that made the car more rigid and reduced the weight, it was exposed carbon fibre. And what is exposed carbon fibre? It's black. And that is exactly how the Black Series was named. Not because a lot of them are black. In fact, most of them, especially on the SLK, were actually silver. Instead, it was because of the exposed carbon fibre roof. It's literally impossible to find one of those for sale. I don't believe there are any for sale at the moment. There are 0 cars in the UK. So if you wanted to get your hands on what was claimed to not be a very good car, then you're looking at well in excess of £150,000. Then the following year, in 2007, that's when the CLK63 Black Series came to market, just like the one here. We're not going to talk too much about it now because, of course, the rest of this video is going to be about the CLK. So fast forwarding to 2008, the third Black Series model was the SL65 AMG Black Series, which is the only V12 Black Series ever made to this date. And of course, it is again not a convertible, much like the SLK, making it the only SL since the 300 SL which wasn't convertible. Just 350 of those cars were ever produced, and they are really hard to get a hold of. There's currently one for sale with my friends at PistonHeads, listed on there with DK Engineering. It's actually price on application if you want to buy that car. However, I believe that'll be around about the £400,000 mark. Before we go any further, I need to talk to you about something very important, and that is something that you should do before you buy any used car. That is run a car vertical report. This is something that I did on this very car before I bought it, because if you're spending this kind of money, if you were to find out later on that the car was crashed or damaged or stolen, something like that, then you'd be extremely disappointed. So I've got here an example of a similar car, C63 AMG, and this report tells me everything I need to know when making a decision as to whether I want to buy this car. So green ticks for odometer, that means the car's not been clocked. For finance as well, and legal status, meaning the car hasn't been stolen, it's not on finance, however, needs attention under damage. And if we scroll further down, we've got a lot of pictures that show that this car has been in a big accident. And not only that, after the accident, it seems to have been wrapped grey to hide the damage. So if you were to see this car for sale, think it looks in a nice condition, you'd actually know that underneath that wrap, this car has been in a big accident. So it's one to avoid. So I want you to save money. And the first way to save money is not to buy a dodgy car. And how do you make sure you do that? You run a car vertical report. And to save money on a car vertical report, I'm going to give you 20% off with my code HPH. Click the link above or down in my description to run a car vertical report on a car that you're thinking about buying. Then after the SL65, there was actually a 4-year gap before Black Series brought out another model, and that was the C63 AMG Black Series in 2012. It shared the same engine as this, and on paper, very similar cars, however, a little bit different, much more refined, better handling, more advanced, but still similar performance to the CLK. However, in my opinion, not quite as special. They made around about 800 of the C63 Black Series, and the interior on those isn't the occasion that it is to be in with this car, with the bucket seats and the carbon door cards and so on. However, if you're looking to get hold of one of those, there's one listed on PistonHeads, a UK car for around about £150,000. Then in 2013, we moved on to what I believe to be the best ever Black Series model produced, probably that ever will be produced. That is the SLS Black Series, of course, with the iconic gull wing doors. That car, if you wanted a nice UK car, you're looking at about £750,000 to pick up one of those. Those are seriously special cars, and of course one of the rarest Black Series models, SLK aside, at just 350 units produced. Then there was a very big gap in the Black Series lineage. People actually said that Black Series had stopped altogether. It was 8 years, 2021, when they brought out another Black Series model, and that was the AMG GT Black Series. Much more extreme, lots more aero, in fact active aero on that car, lots of big wings. Black Series of old were always known for being a little bit discreet, just this ducktail spoiler on this one and the wide arches, not a lot else to tell you that this is an extreme car. However, the AMG GT Black Series is certainly extreme to look at, definitely a GT3 RS rival when you see that thing in the street. 1,700 of those cars were produced, and that tells you how the market has changed when in the SLK they struggled to sell 100, and then obviously they straight away sold out 1,700 AMG GT Black Series, and there's one of those currently for sale on PistonHeads for £375,000. So historically, AMG cars were known for just sticking a big old engine in an existing model and not doing a great deal else to refine the car. However, that is where Black Series was different. So let's talk a little bit more about this car, which is the one that you've come to see. This is the CLK63 AMG Black Series. It features the legendary M156 6.2 litre V8 engine, which was the first ever engine fully designed by AMG. You might notice on the side of the car it says 6.3. Actually, it's a 6.2. But there's two reasons for that. In German tax law, taxing for an engine size is done by every 100 cc or part thereof. In essence, that means that they round up to the next 100 cc. So as far as German tax is concerned, this is a 6.3, and also they did it in homage to the legendary 6.3 V8. The M156 V8 was found in the likes of the CLS63 and the CLK63 AMG. In those cars it had 475 horsepower. However, in the Black Series it was upgraded to 507 horsepower, 630 newton meters of torque, and that was thanks to a few things: a bigger air intake, a revised exhaust system with less back pressure, a remapped ECU to take advantage of that new exhaust, and improved water and oil cooling for track use. And that monstrous engine was coupled to the 7G-tronic AMG speed shift gearbox, 7-speed gearbox, which was first seen in the SLK, however upgraded for this car and with a shorter final drive for a more responsive driving experience. And on the topic of the gearbox, a lot of people criticise the gearbox in this car, saying the shifts are slow, prehistoric even. I completely disagree with that. I find this car a delight to use. Obviously, it is no DSG box. However, on the road, even when you put the car in manual mode, it's very satisfying to flick through the gears. And I love the fact that this car lets you hit the red line in manual mode as well, rather than just shifting up for you. Frustratingly, it started raining, which ironically is not Black Series weather, but we're going to crack on and continue to tell you about this car. A lot of people believe that this was a safety car back in 2006 in the Formula One. However, that is a misconception. Instead, AMG, as a 40th birthday present to themselves, took their safety car, which was much wider, much more aggressive, stripped out compared to the standard CLK63, and made this car based on it. So the safety car came first, and then the CLK Black Series was based on the safety car. And it wasn't just the looks with the wide arches and the big meaty engine up front that they took from the safety car. No, this car underneath is where things get seriously complicated, advanced, and really quite special. This car has a Drexler Motorsport LSD with its own cooler, as well as KW race car style suspension with fully adjustable height, geometry, compression, rebound damping, and a separate fluid reservoir. So seriously trick stuff, and not what people were used to getting on a road car back in 2007. As part of that racy setup, the car was 6mm lower than the standard CLK, 75mm wider at the front, and 66mm wider track at the rear, as well as these immense flared out arches, completely revised rear bumper, carbon fibre rear diffuser, quad tips, which carried over from the CLK63, that aforementioned LSD cooler, this carbon fibre ducktail, and then around the front, plastic front wings, not metal, not carbon fibre, these are actually plastic, with genuine vents for cooling the front wheels there. Of course, that 6.3 badge. Much, much wider front bumper, carbon fibre accents, again for cooling the radiators, not just for show, because this car is all quite discreet. And it sits on these lovely, lightweight, forged alloy wheels, 11 kilograms each at the front and 11.5 kilograms at the rear, so super lightweight. When new, these cars were delivered on Pirelli P0s. I've actually changed it to Michelin PS4Ss. When I got the car, it was on Pirellis, and weather like this, it was seriously sketchy to drive. However, I found that I've got significantly more grip on the PS4Ss, so a lot more confidence in this car, because believe me, it is truly tail happy. So we've actually had to escape to the inside the car because the weather was getting that bad, but perfectly timed that when it was time to tell you about the interior of the car. So here we are. We've got carbon fiber door cards, all part of the weight saving on a standard CLK. This is like quilted leather. And then we've got this lovely flat bottomed steering wheel, DTM style, paddle shifts along with the DTM style weird little gear selector, carbon fiber around it. And it's an unusual shape. Even the flat bottom side, it's not really a circle. And I think the flat bottom, other than to look race car-y, is because of the bucket seats. I've got these Recaro pole position bucket seats, which are standard on all European cars. And obviously, they've got a high side. And to be able to get over them and not hit your knees on the steering wheel, it's got this lovely flat bottom. But compared to other Black Series models, I've not been fortunate enough to sit inside an SLK, but sat inside the likes of the C63 AMG Black Series, this car feels much more like an occasion, much more stripped out and race car in here, thanks to all of these things like the bucket seats and the no rear seats, complete rear seat delete on this car to save weight, carbon fiber instrument cluster, all these little details that make this car feel that little bit more special than a standard AMG model. And I mentioned weight saving. This car weighs approximately nothing less than the standard CLK, around about 1,760 kilograms. So it is not a light car. All of the weight saving that they made was obviously undone by things like the larger wheels, the wider track, and so on. However, this car is praised by many, myself included, for the many thousands of miles that I've done in this car, as not really showing its weight at all and handling quite magnificently in the bends, thanks to things like that suspension that I mentioned. And testament to that is the fact that this car is faster around the Hockenheim ring than the legendary CLK DTM and the Mercedes-Benz McLaren SLR. I think it's time to go for a little bit of a drive. It's a shame that the weather is terrible, but one nice touch on this car is the engine start-stop button, which again, another thing that makes it feel like a race car. And back in 2007, not very many cars at all had keyless start, so fire her up. And you hear that 6.2 V8 fire into life. And then, of course, take the weird little gear selector, which the only other car I've really seen that on is the CLK DTM. And we go for a drive. Obviously, we're going to go very carefully because of this appalling weather. But yes, that great big 6.2 litre V8 engine up front is able to propel this car to a restricted top speed of 186 miles an hour. That was one of the benefits of having a Black Series model. You didn't get the conventional 155 mile an hour electronically limited top speed that many German cars, AMGs included, were restricted to. Instead, you got a little bit more restricted to 186, which is plenty fast enough, believe me, and a 0 to 60 time, which would still stand its own today, of 4.1 seconds, in spite of that gearbox that many people are not a fan of. So as mentioned, it's a 2007. They only made this car for 1 year, really, 2007/2008. Around about, again, mixed reports, 500 to 700 of these cars were made. I've seen Mercedes themselves say both figures. 25 cars only delivered to the UK in right-hand drive. Available in iridium silver, Mars red, Arctic white, obsidian black, and straight black. This car is obsidian black, although on a day like today, you can hardly tell the difference of the metallic versus the straight gloss black. I think most cars in the UK are in black, with only one delivered new to the UK in red, so that's very much the rarest colour. And in 2007, this was a £99,000 car, which was a lot of money back then. However, testament to the value of the Black Series models. Historically, all AMG models depreciate horrendously. You could buy the likes of an S65 and expect to lose a naught or even 2 noughts off the original asking price after 10 or more years. However, this car, £99,000 when new. These cars, for a nice one, you're looking at £100,000 to £150,000. So they haven't lost money, they've actually increased in value, which is fantastic news for an AMG, of course, testament to how special and how rare this car is. A lot of people have asked me about usability of this car, what it's like to daily drive, little things like how good the turning circle is. And I have to say, although it is an okay daily driver, fuel costs aside, and it is actually a very good road trip car, as you see now as I reverse, the turning circle is pretty atrocious. I think thanks to those wide wheels and that wide track, this car sadly does not have a good turning circle at all, unless you want to turn the traction control off here, which notably is pretty much the only button on this side of the center console, which is funny because obviously there's nothing like heated seats, electric seats, and so on, all the options that you might have had on a CLK. Instead, all you get is traction, which is literally off and on, no holding and waiting, no halfway point. It's traction off or traction on, because this is a car to be driven and enjoyed and to be used on track. So long story short, the turning circle is not good at all, but in general it is not too bad to live with. It's very firm. In Europe it's a lot more manageable, but on the rubbish, you can probably see the camera bouncing from down a bit, on the rubbish UK roads, some days you do think, why have I bought this car, as you're having your teeth shaken out. It is very much of the kind of Porsche GT3 RS feel when it comes to the ride, but rewarding all the same for when you get it to the right road and you take it for a blast. Notable owners of a car like this, especially when they were new, the likes of Jeremy Clarkson, who daily drove his for many years, Lewis Hamilton, who famously had his seized off him for going far too fast in France, Simon Cowell, who famously picked it up from Mercedes Brooklands, drove it home and never drove it again. He liked it that much. And of course, later on, Chris Harris, who absolutely raved about this car. So there's no doubt that I think that this is a lot of car for the money, and actually, as it is the cheapest Black Series that you can realistically get your hands on, it is obviously the best value for money Black Series. When I actually think it is one of my favourite, the legendary V8 up front, the fantastic interior, the understated but beautiful, menacing looks, and of course servicing. When it comes to servicing, I actually just had this car serviced by my friends at Rigor Mercedes in Heathrow. Make sure to check them out. A minor service on this car is no more expensive than a standard C63 at around about £350, £400, which for a car of this calibre, of this price point, is actually incredible that it is so cheap to service and maintain. The only things you've really got to watch out for on cars like this are, well, the brakes. Obviously, if you get through a set of those, because the brakes are special on this, then they're not cheap. And the tyres, and I'm actually on my third set of rear tyres on this car. And if I show you what happened to the previous set, you can see this is what happened to the previous rear tyres on this car. Sadly, they are no more. And other things as well, like if you were to damage this car, the bumper, the diffuser, which is quite easy to whack on something, the bespoke parts that obviously aren't made for this car, especially those wheels, then you're really going to have a bad time trying to find a replacement. But general maintenance, this car is incredible value for money. And I believe in investment, actually. I didn't buy this car for investment, I bought it to enjoy. But cars like this were going for 40, 50, 60,000 pounds a few years ago, and they've doubled or even tripled in recent years as people are starting to realise that cars like this are simply not being made anymore. And when it comes to road trip usability on a car like this, it's actually not that bad at all. It's comfortable. It's not that bad on fuel. I managed around about 23 mpg on a big trip around Europe. When you think you can have a lot of fun in a car like this, that is not bad at all. And you've got to accept that fuel costs one of those things, but you certainly could be doing much worse. That said, when I took this car to Wales and I was really having fun, I think I managed to get it down to around about 8 mpg. But of course, for a spirited weekend around Wales, I think that can be excused. But on a long journey, it is actually very comfortable in those Recaro pole position seats. My fiancée, Helen, behind the camera, will attest to the comfort of this car. She said she sleeps very well in it. And she claims, I'm not sure I agree with her, that it was actually her idea for me to buy this car. I'm not sure that's quite true, but she claims that that was her idea. So this car, why do I think it is the best value and the most undervalued Black Series model? It's the cheapest that you can buy. It is one of the best, and it is cheap to maintain, and I think it is a solid investment, a very safe place to put your money, and much better than spending the likes of best part of £400,000 on a AMG GT Black Series, of which they made nearly 2,000. Buy one of these. There's only 25 in the country. There are none for sale in the country at the moment, so certainly a very safe place to put your money, and everybody loves and enjoys this car that realises what it is. So great to chat to people about this car, and great to sort of share the passion of Mercedes-Benz, of AMG. Not a lot of people know about these cars, so I'm loving spreading the message and educating the world on the Black Series. So one final thing to tell you about before we finish this video, a quick reminder. I've mentioned PistonHeads a few times throughout the video, that you can get this car for that price on PistonHeads and that car for that price on PistonHeads. Well, if you want to find a cool, quirky car just like a Black Series, then PistonHeads is absolutely the place to go. So make sure to head to PistonHeads to find your next car, whether it's one of the many thousands of interesting, quirky, sporty cars in their classifiers, or one of the cars that they've currently got coming up for auction, much like the R8 that I recently bought from there. So make sure to mention when you go to PistonHeads that HPH sent you.